Hey everybody, we are going to talk about unemployment today. This is the Unit 2, Video 2, and when we talk about the goals of the economy, remember the 3 goals were to promote growth, limit unemployment, and limit inflation. So this video is going to talk about how we measure unemployment so we can see whether we're limiting it or not. So goal number 2 is unemployment. Definition of unemployment is workers that are actively looking for a job but aren't working. So they want to have a job, they're looking for a job, but they don't have one. That is the definition of unemployment. The unemployment rate is the percent of people in the labor force who do not have a job but are looking. So they want a job but they're looking. How do we figure out that number? Unemployment rate is the number of people unemployed divided by the labor force times 100. So it's not divided by the population, it's divided by the labor force, because we don't want to count in senior citizens or children or people that aren't looking for work. So who's in the labor force? So we make sure we have the right number. Anybody that's over 16 counts as the labor force. Anybody that's able and willing to work counts as the labor force. And then also people that are not institutionalized. So if you're in the military, or if you're in a hospital, or long-term, or if you're in jail, you don't count as the labor force. And then also, I said no military, and then if you're in school full-time and you're not looking for work, you don't count in the labor force. And if you're retired and you're not looking for work, you do not count as the labor force. So again, unemployment rate is the number of people that are unemployed divided by the labor force, not the entire population. Make sure you have that formula written down somewhere. All right, so now we need to get into the 3 different types of unemployment that you need to know. Number 1 is frictional unemployment, and this is temporary unemployment or being between jobs. These are people that have graduated from college or high school and now they're looking for work, or people that are moving and they quit their job in one city and are looking for work in another city. They're frictionally unemployed. I remember that because friction is made by movement, so frictionally unemployed. A type of frictionally unemployed that you should probably be familiar with is seasonal unemployment. So again, this is frictional unemployment, but it fits into a smaller category called seasonal unemployment. And this specific type of frictional unemployment is due to a job only being temporary for a certain season. So like Santa Clauses during Christmas time, or people that work at the 66ers stadium, you only work during the baseball season, that kind of thing. Okay, and then the second type of unemployment, so we have frictional. Second type of unemployment is structural unemployment, and these are changes in the labor force that make some skills obsolete. So these are people that lose their job because they are no longer needed anymore, because the labor force has changed and we don't need that skill anymore. These workers need to learn a new skill in order to get another job. So they're in between work, but it's because, not because they moved or anything like that, but because they need to learn a new skill. So for example, a VCR repairman, we don't need much of those anymore, so those guys need to find a new job. Or milkmen, people that deliver milk, not as big a deal anymore. One type of structural unemployment that we're most familiar with is technological unemployment. This is when automation or machinery replace a person's job. So if the grocery stores ever figure out how to work those self-checkout machines and people don't get angry using them and they actually work, that's going to put the human checkout person out of a job because the machine will do it for them. And it already has put some, but it'll be more if it ever works. So the first 2 types of unemployment are frictional, and the second one is structural. The third one is cyclical unemployment. And this gets its name from the business cycle. When the business cycle is in a downturn and we're down in the trough and we're not producing as much as we should be producing, then we're going to have cyclical unemployment. This is unemployment caused from recessions. As demand for goods and services falls, demand for labor falls, and workers are fired. So in the last recession, we had a ton of construction workers that went out of work because the housing boom and the crisis, people not paying their loans and things like that, there wasn't as much housing needed, and so we didn't need construction workers working, and they were fired. And then those people weren't spending as much money, so then you've got that bleeding into other places where businesses aren't making as much money because the construction workers aren't spending money, people are saving their money to pay for their loans and things. So it just causes this domino effect, and people are out of work, not because they're in between jobs, not because they don't have a skill, but because the economy is in a downturn and we're not producing efficiently. So construction workers laid off during recessions is an example. A restaurant owner who fires waiters after months of poor sales. And then this was during the Great Depression when they said there was 25% unemployment. That's cyclical unemployment. Okay, so those are the three. There's frictional unemployment, there's structural unemployment, and then there's cyclical. Now, natural rate of unemployment. Every country has one. The natural rate of unemployment is not 0. It's not 0%, because we will always have frictional and structural unemployment all the time. There will always be people in between jobs. There will be people that need to learn new skills. So there will always be some people that are not working. We won't have 0%. So our natural rate of unemployment is going to be the percent that is just frictional and structural. The economy is doing great. We're fine if there is only frictional and structural unemployment. In the United States, our percent that is just frictional and structural is somewhere between 4 and 6%. So natural rate of unemployment, or also NRU, is just frictional and structural amount of unemployment when the economy is healthy. This number is also related to full employment output. When everybody's working like they're supposed to be, we're going to have a certain amount of GDP that we should have, and we call that full employment output, or in abbreviation we call it Y. I don't know why we use Y, but we do. So again, the natural rate of unemployment is the amount of unemployment that we have when we are running smoothly, when we're healthy, and it just includes frictional and structural, not the cyclical. Okay. All right, let's review some of these graphs that we've looked at before and see how they relate to these things that we've been talking about. So on PPC, let's start with that. We've got two goods, capital goods and consumer goods. It represents the whole economy. And this line right here is where we are most efficient. And now that we know about GDP, this is our full employment output, the amount of GDP that we should be making if we were using all of our resources efficiently. That's also our natural rate of unemployment. We'll say 5%. So this green dot is 4 to 6% unemployment. That's good. This red dot down here, when we're inside the PPC, we call that inefficient use of resources. And now we're going to call it unemployment because it represents more than 6% unemployment in the United States. And then anytime we're outside this efficient line, we used to call it impossible, but now we're going to say that we are have really low unemployment. The economy is running very, very quickly. We're producing a lot, but we call it impossible because we can't sustain that for an extended period of time. This dotted line right here represents our max capacity at 0% unemployment. And now we can produce that for a little bit, but not for a long time. The economy will get running too fast. We'll have inflation and it's not a good thing. We want to be at the efficient line. If we're past it, we have super low unemployment that will lead to inflation. So, unemployment, full employment, inflation. We see those same dots on the business cycle. Down here in the trough, we can put our red dot for a plus 6% unemployment. On the trend line, any dot on the trend line, this green one, or if I put it here or here, that would be full employment or our natural rate of unemployment, 4 to 6% unemployment. And then if we're up on a peak up here, which is probably where our economy is currently right now, we are at super low unemployment, and it will lead to inflation the more you go up. So you can see the three concepts of unemployment, efficiency, and inflation here. You can see the three concepts of unemployment, efficiency, and inflation here. We're going to see them again on some more graphs, but I just want to introduce this to you so you can see what's happening with the concepts we have here. There is one question though. I said the United States' natural rate of unemployment was between 4 to 6%. That is true. But in other countries, the number's different. For example, the natural rate of unemployment in France or Germany is between 8 and 10%. And economists want to figure this out. Why is it that it's different for different countries? And what most of them have come to conclusion is they attribute that difference, that France and Germany's being higher, to a more generous unemployment benefit system in most European countries. So for example, in the US, unemployment benefits last for about 6 months. So you lose your job, you can go and claim federal unemployment benefits from the government for about 6 months, and then you gotta find a job. In other countries, especially countries in Europe, unemployment benefits are indefinite. If you don't have a job, you can claim them until you get a job, no matter how long it takes. So there's no timeline. So these generous benefits reduce incentives to search for a job. You're not in desperate need of one right away. So that means that people are going to be frictionally unemployed for a little bit longer, more likely in these other countries than in the United States. So their natural rate of unemployment is a little bit higher, or almost double ours, because they have more generous unemployment benefits. All right. Make sure you know that, write it down. There are always a few questions about that on the AP test. All right, now you also need to know about criticisms of the unemployment rate. It's not perfect. Remember, GDP is not perfect as well, because there are things about life that you just can't put into numbers. We got some same problems here with the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate can misdiagnose the actual unemployment rate because of a few things. Number one, discouraged workers. Remember I said people that are unemployed are people that are looking for work, they want a job, and they can't find one. Discouraged workers are people that gave up looking for work. They looked too long, it took too long, they're just done looking, they've given up. So they are not in the unemployment rate. So we're talking about people that, we have a huge homeless population here in California, and they're living in parks and things like that. They're not looking for work, but they don't count as unemployed because they're not looking for work. They don't have jobs, but they're not looking for work, so they don't count in the unemployment rate. So a lot of people feel that rate that we use isn't really actually telling the truth about who's unemployed and who's not, because we don't count people that aren't looking. And we call those people that have given up looking for work discouraged workers. It works like this. The labor force participation rate, which is the number of people in the labor force divided by the population, that is the percent of population in the labor force. If people leave the labor force, if they leave and are not looking for work anymore, they don't count as the labor force. And you go back to the unemployment rate, it's the number of people unemployed divided by the labor force. If that number is smaller, then that's going to make the unemployment rate go, people leave the labor force, that's going to make the unemployment rate rise, go up, because that bottom number is a little bit smaller. Okay. Second thing, underemployed workers, people who want more hours but can't get them. So if people that get a part-time job but need a full-time job, they don't count as unemployed because they have a job. Doesn't matter what kind of job it is, it doesn't count. Also, if their skill level means they could have a better job, maybe they're an airline pilot or something, but they're working at Home Depot, that's also considered unemployed. It might be a full-time job, but they could be at a job where they could be making more money. Doesn't matter if they're looking for that or not, they have a job, so they're not in the unemployment rate. So those underemployed workers is another way that it makes the unemployment rate that we use seem a little bit not as truthful. And then the last thing is that race and age inequalities. Race and age inequalities are not shown in the overall unemployment rate. Minorities have a lower or a higher unemployment rate than the white majority, and also the teenagers are even worse. They have a really high unemployment rate, and when we break those apart we can see it, but in the overall unemployment rate we don't see it. So a lot of people feel, again, it's not showing the actual truthfulness about what's going on with unemployed. So those are the criticisms. They, as long as you know they're there, you can take the unemployment rate you can see what it is for what it really is. All right, that is it.